Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Ocean Whale, and I'm sipping on some strawberry tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you could certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, Mars black, phthalo green, and ultramarine blue. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing. And then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 8 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 4 round synthetic brush. And I will most likely refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well. If you're painting along with me, you're probably going to want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a few additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link to my shop, where you could purchase this same exact paint kit that I'm using, or you could purchase the brushes individually or other paint supplies that I like to use. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting a base coat onto the canvas. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using just black paint. I'm going to be using a left to right type of brush stroke in order to apply the paint for the majority of the canvas, but when I go around the left and the right edges, I tend to miss the edges, so when I'm doing a nice flat color like this, I'll just kind of go I'll just hit the whole side like that. You could also paint the edges, the exterior edges of your canvas. That'll make your project look nice and complete, as if you paid attention to the entire project, the entire thing, as opposed to just the front side of your canvas. And then I'm just going to go ahead and paint the rest of the canvas with black paint. I am doing this left to right type of brush stroke just so I can have kind of a even type of layer of paint. You could certainly use any kind of brush stroke that you like, but when I'm going for a nice flat, even type of layer of paint, I like to try and keep the brush stroke pretty similar throughout that whole area. That'll kind of naturally give me a pretty similar effect, which would be the thickness of the paint or the direction of the paint. So I like to, when I'm doing those big areas, just kind of use a similar brush stroke throughout the whole thing. And then once I've got this done, I am going to take my brush and go directly across like this, giving these long sweeping brush strokes in order to level out the paint. Acrylic is self-leveling to some degree, but if you have some really heavy spots or you're using a heavier bodied paint than I'm using, this will help to get it all nice and flat to the canvas. It will help you to get any spots that you may have missed. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry that large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the sky and the water. I'm going to use my large bristle brush to paint. I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun drying method, or you can do as I did and just pull out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be pre-mixing myself a custom greenish blue type of a color that we'll be using as the kind of the moonlight glow behind our whale, as well as the glow on top of the water. So I'm going to use my large brush to paint, but I'm going to use my small brush to pre-mix myself a custom color. I'm going to be using blue, green, black, and white to create this color, which I have already pre-mixed on my palette so you can see where I'm headed. This is my color in through here. How I got to this was I used a lot of my blue and then just a little bit of the phthalo green. It can really take over and make it super duper green, so just a little bit of the green. And then in order to kind of soften this color and give it some good opacity, I'm going to add a touch of black and a touch of white into it. So what I'm doing is I'm desaturating it a little bit by adding black and white makes gray. So I'm adding a little bit of gray to it, which will make it a softer, more subdued type of a color that will look a little bit, for me, more realistic than if it was a super intense, highly saturated color. So this is where I'm headed with my custom color. You could certainly make yours greener or bluer or lighter or darker if you wanted to. Once you've got it in the shade that is appealing to you, I'm going to take my large brush and I'm going to make and pick up some of that custom color. I'm going to make myself a couple of little tick marks where I want my horizon line to be. This will help me to put the sky color in and not bring it too far down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find myself about halfway up or down the left-hand side. So for me, that's right about in through here. Then I'm going to come almost halfway between here and here. So if this is about my halfway mark, or my quarter way up, I'm going to be about an inch above that, about 6 inches for me, and make myself a little bit of a marker. Then what I'm going to do so I can get the other side at the same height is I can use my brush as a measuring tool and say, okay, how high up did I do it on my brush? And then I can go over to the other side and give myself a little mark at about the same height. That's just going to tell me, okay, well, from there down is going to be my water, and from there up is going to be my sky. Now I'm going to take more of that color, load my brush pretty well, and I'm going to put this huge area in the center of my sky. I really want this to be a big area. It can be as bright as you want or as dark as you want. The whale is going to take up a lot of this area, so you don't really have to make it perfect in this center. If it's streaky, don't worry about it. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to get it to fade out into that sky. So the center's not super important, but you do want to kind of, as you're getting it to go out into the sky, if you can get it to kind of blend out into that black, that would be great. I am going to, again, this is going to be about where my water line is. So I do want this color to come down close to my water line, but not all the way. And again, my whale is going to be covering this area in the middle. So this is really just creating that glow that's going to be behind the whale, tying it to the sky. And I wanted to do this large area before I put the whale on. This way I don't have to worry about working this highlight or this glow around my whale later. So this is just one of those things that I really like to work from the back of my canvas forward. It just makes for me a lot easier of a painting process. And right now I'm just kind of using my the remnants on my brush to just kind of get this to blend out into the black. So if you're having difficulty getting these edges to kind of softly transition into that black, you can always pick up some of the black and kind of paint it back into or over some of this blue color. That'll be, I might end up doing it in a second just so I can get this as smooth as I want to. And you can also just let it dry. It is going to dry darker than it is when it's wet, simply because you're working on top of a black canvas. So this color will see that black through it. And as it dries, it'll get a little bit darker and darker. So you may want to just kind of wait to cast judgment on if you want to do a second coat, or if you want it any darker. Just let it dry and then you can cast that judgment. But what I'm going to do now is, because this is pretty large area for me, and I'm digging the size, it's blending pretty well for me. I don't think I'm going to have to do too much more work on it, but I'm going to let it dry just to kind of give it a rest here. Maybe just give it. Actually, I'm going to pick up a little bit of black, just so this is not blended enough for me. So I just picked up black on my dirty brush, and I'm just going to get this little bottom area to blend in just a little bit more for me. So you can certainly do that around your edges of that area, just in order to get them to blend in just a little bit more. And you can also, I see like little spots on my canvas that in the black area that are not fully painted. So I'm just going to use this opportunity while I'm thinking about it to hit these little edges that were a little bit, I can see my brush marks a little bit, so I'll just take care of that while I'm thinking of it. So now that I have black on my brush, I do know that I'm going to need to wash and dry my brush before I go into that water. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush now. I don't need it to be really 100% super clean, but I do want to get the majority of that black off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these two dots. I'm going to pick up that custom bluish, oops, I just dropped my napkin or my paper towel. I'm going to connect these two dots with that custom color. I'm just going to go straight across. I like to kind of just go briskly or quickly. That way it naturally kind of gives me a pretty straight line. I'm going to have a whole bunch of like splashes and waves and stuff on top of this, so I know for me I don't need it perfect, but I do want it to not be too leaning. So if you feel that, you know, one side is getting a little bit higher than the other, you can certainly kind of check it along the way. And that it looks crooked from where I am over here, but when I just measured it, it looked pretty good. But I will definitely, after I get this painted on, I'll look at it from a distance and see if I need to do any additional correction to it. But I'm just adding this custom color, this custom greenish blue. As I come down towards the bottom of the canvas, I'm going to let the black, I'm going to pick up some black and add black into it. But I feel like I want a little bit more lightness up at that top before I start getting into the black. So I'm going to pick up a touch of my custom bluish green plus a tiny touch of white paint, and I'm going to just get this little extra glow up at the top of this water. You could skip that or do it if you feel that you want it to kind of emulate just a little bit more shine on that from that from the illusion of the moon that's going to be behind our whale. And now that I've got that on, now what I'm going to do, if you had a lot of white on your brush, wash and dry it. Otherwise, I'm going to just pick up my custom greenish blue plus black on my brush to get it to go a little bit darker as it's going down towards the bottom of my canvas. So I kind of want it to just disappear into the darkness down at the bottom of my canvas. So I'm just going to keep picking up black on my dirty brush, and that'll get it to fade right into the bottom. And it doesn't have to be a perfect gradation, just something that's going to look a little bit lighter at the top and darker at the bottom, and that's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to be using my drawing utensil. For me, it'll be a piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, let it dry, make any tweaks that you want, and then you can wash and dry your large brush, get out a drawing utensil, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to draw an outline for our whale. I'm going to be using my chalk. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that's comfortable to you. I'm going to guide you through a series of markers, and we're going to connect those markers, and hopefully by the time we're done, we're going to have something that looks like a big, huge, giant whale jumping out of the water. So again, I recommend that your canvas is dry before you start this step, because it's always easier to draw on a dry canvas than it is on a wet canvas. So I'm going to find myself the center of my canvas, left to right, top to bottom. So for me, that's right about here. From there, I'm going to come down maybe about 1/4 of an inch, make another marker. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the left-hand side from here, and I'm going to stop about 2 inches away from the edge of my canvas and drop it maybe about another 1/2 inch or so. Give myself another little, maybe a little curved kind of line like that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the right hand side of my canvas down at my horizon line. I'm going to come in about 1 inch, make myself a marker, and then about another inch, make myself another marker. I'm now going to connect here to here to here with an arcing type of a line. So the whale is on its back, the top of, or the belly of the whale is up there. So this is going to be the back of the whale. We're just going to give it an arcing line like this, and then just kind of meet it with that little line in through there. I'm now going to give myself the fin of the whale. I think that's what it's called. So I'm going to come a little bit to the right of here, so maybe somewhere in this vicinity, and then I'm going to go down here maybe about 2.5 to 3 inches. If this is about halfway between here and here, I'm a little bit to the left of that, maybe about 1 inch or so, something like that. And then I'm going to come down from here almost to my horizon line and go over to the right just a little bit, something like that. Now I can connect here to here, and then here to here, and there's my fin. Now I'm going to connect this marker. Well, let's make one more marker before we connect it. So if you go straight up from here and go almost halfway towards the top of your canvas. So if this is halfway up down my canvas, 1/4 of the way to the top is going to be somewhere about here. I'm about 1 inch below that is going to be the top, or the bottom of the whale, but the top on our canvas, right in through there. Now I'm going to connect here to here to here. The only thing is this is the face, so I want to give this a little bit more of a curve. So I'm going to take this more like that. So that'll be the curve in through there. Now I'm just going to take from here, I'm going to curve it up in through here. You can almost kind of flatten it a little bit up on this top side, and then just I'll just go from here so we can see where I'm headed, like this, like that. So that'll be my shape. Almost looks like an upside down banana type of a shape. Then I'm going to put my flippers on. If this is I'm going to go up to the top. If this is my halfway mark, I'm going to go to the left of that about 1 inch, 1.5 inches, something like that. Then go to the left of that about another inch. You can cross these lines over into the whale itself, so maybe something like that. That looks pretty good in through there. Now I'm going to go straight up from here, and about halfway between here and the top of my canvas, somewhere in through here, and then go to the left just a little bit, maybe about 1/4 inch or so. I'm going to connect here to here. This is going to be the bottom side of the flipper, so I'm going to bring it out like this, kind of point it a little bit like that, and then just bring it back, round it like that, and then just round this over, something like that. Then I'm going to make the flipper that's on the other side of the whale. So I'm going to come up this line, maybe about 1/2 inch, something like that. And then I'm going to go to the left of here, maybe about 1.5 inches, somewhere in through here. I'm going to split the difference between these two and go kind of diagonally out about 1.5 inches, somewhere in through there. And I'm going to connect these with just an oval line, something like that. And like that will give me that one on the other side. Now I'm just going to make myself the markings on this type of whale. They have white markings on their belly and on like the side of their face. Fun fact is when they're in the water, submersed in the water, these white colors will make them look almost invisible to the animals below them, and the black on the top, when they're submersed in the water, people or anything from the top can't see them because they're like camouflage. So it's really cool. I learned that at the zoo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some markings on the bottom of the whale, which will be the top side. So I'm going to put one in through here. I'm going to just kind of give myself kind of an organic type of a curved line, and it's going to kind of wrap around between my two flippers in through there. And of course, yours doesn't have to be exactly as mine. We can reshape them as we paint as well. I'm going to put one back in this vicinity like this. These markings are definitely modeled after a whale that I saw in person, so you can make yours any way that you want. We're going to have a little light spot on the top, but it's going to be very minimal sliver of a light area, and then I'm going to put another big area back in through here, and that's all I'm going to be doing for my outline. You could certainly make any little modifications that you'd like. We're going to be using our medium brush for the next step, so you can put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat of the whale. I'm going to be using my medium brush to paint, and the colors that I'm going to be using are black and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a custom gray color for these areas that are going to be representing the bottom color of the whale, and then we're going to be using just black for the rest of the whale. I'm going to do my gray areas first. I have pre-mixed myself a gray color, which is on my palette. This is the color here. How I got to this was a little bit of black and a little bit of white. So I'm just going for a medium gray tone. I don't want it to be too light because I want to be able to give the illusion that this is a nighttime scene. So I don't want it to go too white. Or light, so this is the color in through here, and then I'm just going to take it in these sections that I have designated as the sections that are going to be representing the white sections of the whale. And of course you can make your sections whatever size that you want. The dominating thing is that they're on that side of the whale, the belly side of the whale, and maybe a little bit on the cheeks. So something like this, I'm bringing it right into here. This is going to kind of wrap around this this fin that's on our side. So I'm just going to take my gray color and kind of line the top. I skipped the fin, and then I'm going to kind of line the top like that, and then it's going to go into this section right in through here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and these don't have to be super clean executed lines because you're going to have lots of splashes and all kinds of, we're going to tweak these colors a little bit on a future step, so don't worry about that being too perfect. Now I'm going to just wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up black paint, and I'm going to color the rest of the whale with black. The only places that I would be mindful of is kind of like in through here. Wherever your chalk mark is, you can kind of just leave yourself a little bit of the evidence of your chalk mark. That'll help you to continue the idea that this fin is on top of that fin. And then when we go to do our final details on the fins, that's when you'll be able to get rid of those markers. But during the painting process, I know for me, sometimes if I get rid of my guidelines too early, sometimes I'll make my objects look a little bit bigger. They just continue to grow without me even realizing it. But if I can leave the hint of that, my guidelines, or especially when there's two objects that are sitting right next to each other that are of the same color, like these two flippers, then I would, it would help me to leave that in through there. So in through here, I'm just going to scoot this black in through here, and of course, like I just reshaped that little light area, which is totally fine. It doesn't have to, again, be exactly the same as my outline was drawn. My goal right now is just to kind of get rid of that background color and give my whale a base color. So I know it seems like, why did we paint this whole area with the with that background color when it was already black and now we're repainting it black? I do that because for me, I like to have that natural look behind my objects, and I don't want to call it a difficulty, but I know for me it's easier to paint objects on top of a gradient of sorts than to get that gradient to work around the whale and get this gradient back there to look as smooth as I wanted it to. So it's just, again, a process that works well for my painting ways. You might find that it would have been easier for you to paint the whole whale and then just make your background around it. That, whatever process is easier for you is what you should go for. I'm going to go ahead and do this little face area, and again I'm going to leave a little bit of my chalk mark, especially as I'm going into this nose because it's black on black, and I'll just never know where to put that nose if I don't leave a tiny evidence of that chalk mark. And chalk's really easy to erase, so just know that you can certainly do that. Same thing with this fin back here. It's already black on black, so I'm just going to leave a little bit of that evidence of the outline. I'm going to pull this in just a little bit into the water, just so I've got a good transition when I start to make those splashes. I also think I want to pull the tip of this over to the left a little bit. I think it's a little bit too far to the right, so I'm going to actually pull it over here, but you're not going to be able to see it black on black, so I'm just going to take my little chalk and just kind of do this, just so I can get a little, I felt it was too much over to that left-hand side. So now that I've made my little adjustment, I'm just going to paint this whole area in. I'll erase my other little tip with just a little bit of water on my brush or black paint, but I'm just going to get this right in through here, leave a little bit of the chalk mark visible, and then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, again, I'm going to take a little bit of water. I'm going to pick up my little smaller brush and just erase this little guy in through here. And then you can wash your medium brush and get your small brush out and ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our whale. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are white, black, gray, and blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding some strategic highlights and shadows so I can make this beautiful creature look three-dimensional and shiny and wet and have a great form to it. So I'm going to be adding some highlights up at the top as if the night glow is just illuminating the top of the animal. I'll be adding some highlights on the fins, flippers, whatever we're supposed to be calling these. I'm going to also add a little bit of highlight in through here. I'm going to add a little highlight on the side of the animal, so again it adds to that form. And we're going to be adding some blue tones as well in order to give it that little bit of shininess. I'm going to start by adding a contour to the actual body itself. So I'm going to be using some of my gray plus a little bit of black paint. So gray plus black on my brush. And think of this as the part of the whale that bumps out the most to us. And I don't want it to go this light, so that's why I have the black on my brush as well. And I'm just going to kind of rub it along the edge of the what I believe to be the part that's going to kind of get darker as it goes under the whale. So something like this. You even have the fin in through here, fin flipper. So just kind of bringing this up a little bit higher in through here, like that. And then I want to get it to blend down into here. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more black on my brush and a touch of the gray, but less gray and more black. So as I'm working my way down, it's going to get a little bit darker. So something like that, just a little bit of a fade gradient. You could certainly be using a bigger brush to do this too. I just thought it would work out well for me because I'm going to be using I'm going to be using it for the other areas of the fish as well. I'm going to put a little bit of this gray and black as a highlight on this, on the fin right in through here. So this is gray and black, just allowing for this highlight to happen. Once I've got it on there, what I'm going to do is I just pick up a little bit of black to get it to blend out. And now that this is kind of the last thing I'm doing to this fin, I can get rid of my chalk mark as well. So I just want it to be visible on top of that, on top of the background. And I also want to give it just a little bit of shape. So that looks good in through there. I'm going to take a little bit of water on my brush, just clean my brush here, a little bit of water so I can just kind of get rid of that. And again, I'm going to have lots of splashes and stuff that are going to help to disguise any of these imperfections, but that looks pretty good to me. In this area in through here, I don't really need much on this bottom side, but if you felt that this bottom side you wanted to have a little bit of form, you could certainly pick up black with just a teeny tiny bit of the gray, or even just a little bit of black with the gray and a touch of water on your brush. So you could certainly give just a little bit of contour down in through here if you wanted to, but I don't suggest doing much because you want it to look pretty dark down on that bottom side. And then once you've got that done, just put a little bit of water on your brush. If you have any little chalk mark, you could get away with, if in your head you've got the moon directly on the other side of the fish, you could certainly, actually, I don't know if this is a fish, it's a mammal, I think. Whales, mammals? I think it's a mammal. You could certainly put a little glow around that edge, but again, we're going to be having splashes and stuff, so I don't think that that's necessary. Now that I've got that, I'm going to start adding my highlight onto, let me add my highlight onto the fins first. So again, this is my gray plus a teeny tiny bit of black paint. I'm going to do the same thing that I did right on that fin, right on the fin here. So on this left-hand side, doesn't have to go all the way to the edge. I'm just kind of adding this highlight in through here, and then I'll get it to blend towards this right-hand side. Maybe put a little bit of water on my brush just to get it to go closer to that left, and then just a little bit of black to fade it out over here on the right hand side. I'm going to add some blue to these areas in a minute so they'll look like they've got a little bit of shine to them. And that looks nice. I'm going to do the same thing over on this left hand side. I'm going to put this highlight over here because that's where I feel it would be catching it more towards that top side, something like that. Wiping my brush off, you can either use a little bit of water or black paint to get it to fade into that black area. That was a little bit too light, so I'm going to wash my brush again so I don't go too dark or too light. And I picked up a little bit of black. There we go. That's giving me my blend that I want. And now that I've got those highlighted areas on the black sections, now I'm going to do the same thing to the gray section. So I'm going to pick up some gray plus white on my brush, and I'm going to go on the top side of these sections. So this is gray plus white. You don't have to bring it all the way white. That's why I'm using gray with my white in order to give me kind of a gradual transition into what's going to be, I'm going to have some white water that's going to be splashing, and I might do some little sparkles and stuff like that. So that's why I like to kind of gradually build my way to the light. So this was a little bit of white plus my gray, just cleaning up this edge here. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white in my gray just to get this edge. Oops, I see I have some greenish blue on my brush too. I don't want that. So white plus gray over here, just getting my edge of the belly nice and bright, and just allowing it to get darker as it comes down this left-hand side. And then I'll do the same thing over here. So white plus gray on my brush. I'm going to get this whole inside edge in through here to be nice and bright, as if, again, that night glow is casting its beautiful highlight onto the top of this large animal jumping out of the water. So something like this, and then just going to get it to blend down into that gray. So just maneuvering my brush a little bit, something like that. And you could put a little bit on this guy over on this little marking over here, but this is kind of more on the dark side, in my opinion, on the whale. So now that I've got that, now I'm going to start adding, oh, I want another, do I want that highlight yet? I want kind of a shine that is on this side of the animal. I think I'm going to add that in a minute. I'm going to start adding a little bit of blue. So I didn't wash my brush. I'm just picking up some of my ultramarine blue. And I'm going to use this in the black sections and in the gray sections, more on the top side of the animal, or our top side, towards the top of the canvas. So this is just ultramarine blue. I know it's going to be transparent. You're going to see right through it. So I can use it as like a glaze on top of my existing colors, and you'll be able to see right through it, and it's going to show you that color underneath. If you're not using the same type of paint as I am and yours is opaque where you can't see through it, you could certainly add a little bit of water or liquid medium to it so it becomes that translucent type of effect. I'm just adding water on my brush right now so I can kind of eliminate a little bit of this outline. Again, there's going to be splashes and stuff there, so I'm not worried about that one too much. I just picked up more of my blue. I'm putting some on this flipper in through here, and I'm not overdoing it. I just wanted to have a little bit of a moonlit glow to it. So blue to me definitely represents that, and shiny black, you know, tends to have lots of blue in it. So that's, or when I see it to have blue in it, so that's where I'm going. Picking up more of my blue and just going to kind of rub this on this section in through here. And again, you don't have to do it on the whole thing, just wherever you feel that it would benefit you and kind of add that extra special or extra something to the appearance of your beautiful animal. I think I want a little bit lighter up top. I'm going to pick up just a little tiny bit more white paint. I feel like this little area up in through here needs to be a little bit lighter before we move on to other things, and maybe just a little bit more over here on this edge in through here. You can always add more highlights later, but I feel like now that I'm seeing it as it's drying, like I want just a little more intensity in some of these highlights so they really take on the effect of that moonlit glow. And then I'm going to add a big kind of wet, shiny mark on the side of the whale, just giving this its due justice. So I want kind of a shiny spot in through here, like it's wet and it's reflecting the colors around it. So I just washed my brush. I'm going to pick up a touch of gray and white and water. So I just kind of like a thinned out gray white mixture. You can cross this over this section into the black, or you can have it next to it. I think I'm going to kind of maybe cross it over a little bit. So I've got this in through here, and then I'm just going to kind of think of this like as a reflection on a glass or something of that nature. I want it to just take on that kind of wet appearance of, you know, of this animal. So I can just give it this kind of graphic type of mark, and I'm going to put a touch of white on it. And you can certainly play with this as much as you want to. I'm going to just pick up a little bit of white. It's just taking the contour of that body and adding that little wet mark to it. I think I'm going to, not sure that I think I'm going to dull that down a little bit. I just added a touch more black. I feel like I don't see through it enough in through here. So we're going to just kind of modify this just a little bit in through here. Put a little bit more white to get this guy. And then once you've got it as much as you want, we are going to be using our large brush for the next step. I don't really like this right here. I just picked up some black and gray. I'm going to just modify this right on the fly here. My highlight here it's not translating the way that I wanted it to. So we're just gonna get rid of that part in through there. Yeah, that looks better just up in through there. So that's where it's gonna stay. And picking up a little bit of blue just to kind of refresh this. And if you do have, I'm gonna let mine dry. I might tweak this a little bit more before I go on to the next step. But once you've got this done, you can put, oh, we need a little eye. Hold on. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my gray. Just put a little eye. I think that goes somewhere in this vicinity. Just a little wrinkle bump. You could also put a little air hole in through here just with a little tiny gray type of a curve. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to put this brush away, take out my large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the splash. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are gray, my custom watercolor, and white. And if I use any other colors, I'll let you know. So I am going to be having the whale is going to be, you're going to see some of the ripply wave stuff here, and it's going to be pulled up to the whale, and then the whale is going to be pulling the water with it, and it's going to fall off the whale, and it's going to be just a motion of the ocean. So I want it to have lots of dimensions, so I'm going to start with gray first, and then I'm going to build my way to the brightness. So I'm going to use a little bit of my gray, and very little bit. This is all going to be a step of less is more. So I know that my tail's kind of coming out from here, so I'm just going to kind of give myself an idea of where I want the majority of this to go. So I'm just going to kind of bring this down to the water. I'm having the main splash kind of halfway between the bottom of my canvas and my horizon line. So somewhere in through here, I'm just going to take a little bit of this gray. I'm having it come almost all the way over to the left-hand side. I'm not going to have a big, tall area. This is just going to be, we're seeing it from the side. It's not going to be a very large area itself. So just maybe something like this, and it's coming out in through here. So once I've got my footprint down in through here, I'm going to do the same idea of this up through the whale itself. So I'm going to be pulling this up the tail, and you don't always have to have these straight pulls. You can also dot it as well. So I'm going to be doing a combination of kind of pulling it and dotting, but just want to kind of get my mind set as to where I want this to go. I need to make a little bit more gray first. Hold on, black and white. Make myself a little bit more gray. There we go. I was running out, so I needed to make a little bit more. I'm going to pull it up the side of my whale, and think of it just how is the whale pulling this? So it's going to be pulling it out, but then maybe up in through here, because the whale is starting to bend, maybe it starts to come back in the opposite direction. So right in through, I would say this midsection in through here, it might get a little confusing where it's just kind of dotting out. It's just kind of being pulled a little bit, maybe just splashing off of the animal. So you can really have fun with how energetic you want this to go. But I'm going to have it coming off a lot of the animal and just showing the direction of it. So right now I hardly have any paint on my brush, just allowing for myself to understand where I want all of this to happen. So that's pretty good in through there. I feel that like the flippers would have some good water on the tip of them, and then maybe it's kind of just like pulling or splashing back, like something like this. So again, hardly any paint is on my brush, maybe a couple little dots here and there. And know that I'm going to put 2 more colors on top of this. So I don't need to do it 100% right now, just kind of giving myself that idea of what's happening. And you can cover the little tip of the of the fin, whatever you want to do. And as it's coming down here, maybe now it starts to go down in the front direction. So I can start to tap it and kind of pull it down off the nose, and you know, maybe it kind of starts to fall back down into the water. So it's really fun when you're doing something like this and you're thinking about, what is this object? If I want it to look like a realistic, or you know, tell a pretty good story of a believable story of what's happening with this particular thing, I just kind of imagine, you know, if I pulled an object in this direction, what would happen to that water as it is being pulled along with it? And the laws of motion are always going to happen. Gravity, motion. So we've got gravity and motion being, you know, dictating what's happening to this water. So it's a really fun thing. And if it starts to get away from you and you're like, wow, that's just too much. It's, you know, too energetic, well, just know that this whale can really be, it's big, it's a big whale. So it can have lots of energy. So I'm thinking that that's pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, without washing my brush, I'm going to pick up a little bit of my watercolor and a touch of white on my brush. So a little bit of the watercolor, that bluish green and white, and now I'm going to start kind of giving myself a little bit more energy in the water. I'm not going to go over every single gray spot that I did. This is just in addition to it. So this is, I'm just kind of building that dimensional element within the water. I feel like I want that to go out a little bit further, and you can start to see that bluish green is starting to become a little bit more evident. And if it goes too light on you or too green on you, just neutralize it, or take the intensity out of it, desaturate it with that gray color. I'm going to just kind of bring this right up this side of the whale, something like this. It's looking like it's got lots of energy to it, but I'm not going too fast. I'm just kind of taking my time, understanding where I want these splash marks to go. And if you bring it too much into the whale, and you can always come back and touch up the belly or whatever you need to. I feel like it would overlap a little bit. Just because, I mean, it's the whale is pulling this water, so I feel that would definitely happen. So you could definitely overlap the whale a little bit if you wanted to. And of course, I'm just kind of pulling these little pieces out in this direction. Again, I'm trying to make it look like there's motion to it. That's working in through there visually for me. And then I'm gonna just continue with these two colors on my dirty brush, which is the watercolor plus a little bit of white. And I'm going to just overlap this little corner of the fin a little bit and just bring these little marks back in through here. And again, I'm dotting it, I'm pulling it, I'm doing a couple of different brush strokes in order to get it to have that textural element without overdoing it. And again, I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, so this is allowing for me to control that intensity, the brightness of it, and get it to look like it's got some good structure and some good movement to it. I'm going to put this right in front of the face. And because we used the ultramarine blue on the face and then we used the phthalo green in the water, those two colors are really contrasting with one another, which is fabulous because you're going to get that dimensional element on the water as well, because it's not fighting with the blue that you have in the animal itself. So just, you know, little tricks again to get those elements to do what you want them to do. And again, you don't have to follow the exact footprint of what you did for the gray. So if you feel like there's a couple areas that you want to pull these falling pieces down a little bit more, feel free to do so. And then I'm going to do I feel like I want a little bit more of this lighter color over in through here. I'm going to hit it with one last pass with more white paint, and that's gonna sell the full story of my splash. That's looking pretty good. So now you could wash your brush if you feel like you're super overloaded, or just pick up white. So I'm gonna attempt to just pick up white first, and then if I feel that it's carrying too much of that watercolor in, I'll wash my brush, but I'm gonna just start with a little bit of white, and then again, my goal is to not overpaint, and just kind of using the little tip of my brush and giving myself these little pops of the brighter white, and again, this way it's gonna keep that dimensional element from what I just did, all that work that I did layering those colors on. And if you wanted to, as you get towards this last little bit of these white spots, you could certainly use a smaller brush. I'm gonna take my small brush with a little bit of water. I still see a little chalk in here that I wanted to get rid of. There we go. You could certainly use the smaller brush. Give yourself more speckly, like individual type of speckle marks, but I'm finding that this is working pretty good for me. It's giving me my dimension that I want. I really want this area to be pretty energetic and splashing up a lot, so I'm actually hitting it a little bit harder right now. And I do want to, at this point, get that blue off of my brush, so I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I'm going to just pick up my white paint at this point, and then really get in with some bold kind of white speckly marks. And again, you could certainly use a smaller brush. You can see I'm going in the trajectory that I feel that water would be pulled. So that's why I am just being mindful. If I need it to have more of a directional brush stroke, I could certainly do that. If I felt I wasn't telling the story enough with my dots, I could certainly streak it a little bit, and that will give you that additional information of the movement of it. You could even wipe your brush off and give yourself these really tiny little effervescent type of sprays out a little bit farther. But you want to just make sure that you have hardly any paint when you're doing those little almost like foam type of sprays off of it, so that way you don't run the risk of making it too overpowering. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to just do a little bit more on this front portion. Again, just a little bit of that white, making sure that it's telling everything I want it to be telling, and then just maybe these little kind of effervescent little splashes coming out. And I'm going to do a little bit on this guy and through here. And I will definitely, once I've got it done, I will definitely let it dry and see if there is any additional places that I want to add more brightness, or like I can still see some of my chalk marks in through here. So I just put a little bit of water on my brush to get rid of those little chalk marks. So whatever areas I find aren't completely finished, or that I didn't paint over, which I typically do paint over all the little chalk marks, but in this case there was a couple that were still lingering, so that's where I would take my little water and just on my brush and just get rid of those marks. And then I'm just getting right over this little mouth in this area. I feel like that would be pushing a bunch of the water, and just kind of, maybe I'll just let myself run out of paint right now to get different tones in this little splash in through here. And then again, I would just kind of let mine dry, see if there's any additional places that I want to add. This, maybe you can give this the illusion that it's coming back down into here. Just these little, I'm just playing right now in the little remnants on my brush. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, which is very hard to stop once you get going, I'm having too much fun right now. Once you've got this done, you can put this big brush away, take out a small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm using my small brush. I'm going to use my ocean color or my custom bluish green color. I'm going to sign mine in the bottom right. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours. You could use your first name, your full last name. You can use a date. You can make a special symbol. Whatever you want for your identifying mark to be is up to you because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you would like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very massive, beautiful sea animal, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.